When most people think of Spider-Man, they picture the familiar red and blue costume, but as any comic book fan will tell you, our friendly neighborhood Spidey has worn a ton of outfits over the years, all of varying aesthetic appeal. So, I'm Ewan, you're watching What Culture Comics, and it's time to rank every Spider-Man costume from the comics worst to best. Number 38, The Wrestler. Back when Spider-Man debuted in Amazing Fantasy number 15, Peter Parker was just breaking into the exciting world of entertainment via a wrestling match he entered to earn some quick cash. Unlike the ways it has been depicted on screen, the original comic had Spider-Man debut in blue slacks, a white collared shirt, loafers, and a mask made of webbing, which worked for his purposes, but didn't look great in the long run. Plus, there was no Bonesaw, which bumps it down by proxy. Number 37, The Amazing Bagman. When Peter Parker went to the Fantastic Four to help ridding himself of the symbiote, the team worked to help, but left the Warcrawler without a costume. To help, Johnny Storm fashioned a new quote-unquote costume for his pal made up of a shoeless FF suit with a paper bag for a mask. Oh, and there might have been a giant kick-me sign on his back as well. Number 36, Ghost Spider. Thanks to the many versions of Spider-Man found throughout Marvel's alternate realities, there exists a version of the character who died, but who was then resurrected by the Sorcerer Supreme, who was Bruce Banner in his universe. On Earth 11638, Uncle Ben never died, so Peter Parker never learned the whole "with great power" mantra, leaving him to become a supervillain until his death and resurrection turned him into Ghost Spider. Worth it entirely just for the pun. Number 35, The Identity Crisis Costumes. Back in the late 90s, Peter Parker's alter ego, Spider-Man, was something of a criminal, which pushed him to abandon the identity for a time and become other new superheroes. Throughout this period, which is called Identity Crisis, he adopted the persona of 4 superheroes, including Prodigy, Ricochet, Dusk, and Hornet. It's a wonder why they never continued. Number 34, Spider UK. This version of Spider-Man from Earth 833 sports an homage to the Union Jack on his chest and is actually William Braddock, better known as the Captain Britain of Earth 616. Number 33, Spider-Man Fear Itself. During the Fear Itself storyline, numerous characters were given new costumes via Tony Stark and the dwarves of Nidavellir. For Spider-Man, his costume was crafted from Uru metal and featured gauntlets capable of shooting blades, and while the costume was beneficial, Odin ultimately ordered its destruction. Number 32, Cyborg Spider-Man. It only lasted for 1 issue, but Cyborg Spider-Man did feature a rather killer-looking cybernetic arm and eyeballs for a little while, thanks in large part to the strange love of all things cybernetic back in the early 90s. Number 31, The Aaron Aikman Armor. The Aaron Aikman armor belonged to the suit's namesake, who was the Spider-Man of Earth 31411. The armor was created to boost Aikman's powers after he found a way to genetically resequence his genome with that of a spider, but it didn't save him, sadly, during the Spider-Verse event. Number 30, Spider-Phoenix. Back in Spider-Man number 25, Peter Parker found himself and Excalibur stuck on one of the villain Arcade's famous murder worlds. Thanks to some deception tech, Spidey found a way to make it look like he gained the powers and possession of the Phoenix Force. And while it wasn't real, he did give his costume a sprucing up to make the illusion work. Number 29, The Final Costume. In this reality, Spidey goes up against the NYPD and is ultimately killed by them while standing over the grave of Aunt May, but he did also participate during the Spider-Verse event, and the outfit as a whole is pretty cool. Number 28, The Spider Armor Mark II. Spider-Man's Mark II armor was developed after Peter lost his spider sense for a while and needed a bit more protection so as to not get shot up the first time he got into a fight. Not only is the armor bulletproof, it also features magnetic webbing and helped win a fight against Massacre. Number 27, Spider-Man 1602. The costume here is essentially a period-appropriate version of what Spider-Man might look like in the year 1602, but still features the spiderweb mask familiar to the character. Number 26, Spider-Man 2099's White Suit. When the Miguel O'Hara of Earth TRN 588 found himself stuck in present-day Earth 616, Peter Parker put him to work at Parker Industries, where he built a new suit. Number 25. Spider-Man Unlimited. Spider-Man Unlimited is an animated series, but due to the show's popularity, a version of the costume found its way into the comics. Web Spinner's Tales of Spider-Man featured a modified version of the Unlimited costume, which features numerous details not seen in the animated series, but remains largely true to its form. That cape is a seriously good look, I swear, and it's absolutely bonkers we haven't seen it in any comics since. Number 24. Spider-Armor Mark 1. Spider-Man may be powerful in and of himself, but that doesn't mean he won't up his game when a foe comes along and proves themselves to be a bit too much to handle. Because of this, Spidey has fashioned various forms of armored costumes over the years, with his first, the Mark 1, appearing back in 1993 looking pretty much like a silver and black version of his regular costume. Number 23. Captain Universe. Thanks to an accident, Spider-Man was granted the Uni-Power, which changed him into Captain Universe. During this time, he was able to use numerous powers related to the Uni-Power, including flight, telekinesis, and a new costume, which instantly transformed as soon as the power hit him. Number 22. Spider-Armor Mark 3. As you can tell, Spider-Man's armor has gone through a number of versions over the years, but one of the fans' favorites has got to be his Mark III design created for Amazing Spider-Man number 682 back in 2012. This armor was put together while Peter was still working for Horizon Labs, so he could go up against the Sinister Six with weapons and armor designed to combat each and every threat that team's members dished out. Number 21. The Insulated Spider Suit. Spider-Man's foes are diverse, but thanks to Peter Parker's gifts in intellect and engineering, he often finds ways to battle his enemies with a distinct advantage, usually after taking a beating first. Spidey's electrically insulated suit, otherwise known as the Electro-Proof suit, was designed to fight against, you guessed it, Electro, but it looks really cool. Number 20. Spider-Man Dark. After Deadpool gets hired to kill Peter Parker, he succeeds and sends our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man into the great beyond. He then learns that he killed off his superhero BFF and managed to pull him out of purgatory. But when Peter was returned to the land of the living, he came in a much darker costume, which somewhat mirrored his recently deceased mood. Number 19. Spider-Man's Secret War costume. During the Secret War event in 2004, Spider-Man was teamed up with some of Marvel's greatest superheroes to try and take down the nation of Latveria and its ruler, Dr. Doom. In teaming up with Nick Fury and the rest of the gang for a super secret mission, Spidey donned a much darker disguise than his traditional threads, and it's kind of a really good look into what Spidey may look like if he was ever an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Number 18. Spider-Punk. Spider-Punk, otherwise known as the Anarchic Spider-Man, is the Spider-Man of Earth 138, and the alternate identity of that universe is Hobart Brown. This Spider-Man features a punk rock look with all the bells and whistles, including a cool jacket, spikes on his head for no reason, and all the other accoutrements you might expect from a punk Spidey. Number 17. Negative Zone Spider-Man. Spider-Man once had to make a trek into the Negative Zone to rescue a group of people from Yancey Street who had gotten themselves trapped there. Not wanting to head into the unknown without the right clothes, he fashioned a suit just for the occasion, which ultimately went on to become the suit that inspired the creation of his Dusk identity. Number 16. Spider-Man Noir. Spider-Man Noir answers the question of what Spider-Man would look like had he been fighting crime during the Great Depression. To match the style with the era, Spider-Man doesn't rely solely on his powers, but also carries a revolver, sports an era-appropriate hat and duster, and dresses in all black. Number 15. Scarlet Spider 2. Peter's many clones didn't like to sit on the sidelines, which is why another one called Kane Parker picked up the Scarlet Spider mantle in 2012 and ran with it, all the way to Houston, Texas. The series kicked off with the new Scarlet Spider differentiating himself from Ben Reilly by adopting an entirely new, mostly red costume, and it was sleek as hell. Number 14. The Scarlet Spider. The first one. Back in the 90s, some cloning shenanigans left the world with more than one Spider-Man, but thanks to some further confusion, the Spider-Man we all knew and loved was a clone, and then he wasn't. Regardless, there exists a Spider-Man named Ben Reilly who is a clone of Peter Parker and wears a costume of his own design, which features a sleeveless hoodie. Truly iconic, but not the best look Ben rocked during his web-slinging days, if I'm being honest. Number 13. The Iron Spider. During Marvel Comics' first Civil War event, Peter Parker found himself working under Tony Stark on the side of the pro-registration forces. Tony crafted Spidey a new armored suit, which came with 4 extra appendages and all the bells and whistles you might expect from a suit created by Iron Man. Number 12. Ultimate Spider-Man. Back in 2000, Marvel whipped up the universe of Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, which featured the company's popular characters reimagined for the new millennium. The most popular character from that shakeup was easily Spidey, who was back to being a teenager and came with a new costume appropriate to his classic look, but with some modifications, courtesy of the always great Mark Bagley. Number 11. Spider Armor Mark IV. Spider-Man's Mark IV armor first appeared in the first issue of the hero's 4th volume back in 2015 when Peter was in control of Parker Industries. The suit was made to look like his classic costume, but featured a new emblem on the chest, which was completely shiny and came with a ton of weapons and tools, plus some gorgeous covers from the legendary Alex Ross. Number 10. Spider-Man's Stealth Suit. Spider-Man fashioned his stylish stealth suit when he had to go up against Hobgoblin during the big-time story arc in Amazing Spider-Man number 650. To combat Hobby's sonic screams, he created this suit to warp both light and sound around it, which had the added effect of making the suit completely invisible. Number 9. The Future Foundation Suit. After Johnny Storm of the Fantastic Four was killed, it fell on Spider-Man to take the place of his old pals on the team, which was rebranded the Future Foundation. To take his role on the team, he was given a new suit crafted from unstable molecules, which had the ability to self-repair as well as change his appearance. Number 8. Spider-Man 2099. The Spider-Man of the year 2099 got his genes all spliced up with those of a spider's, which ultimately turned him into a human Spider-Man. Though his powers were slightly different, Miguel O'Hara became his time period Spider-Man who fought against an evil corporation while wearing a blue suit with red highlights that looked like the Punisher's skull emblazoned across his chest. One of the most brilliant redesigns ever committed to print. Number 7. The Superior Spider-Man. When Otto Octavius found himself dying, he managed to transfer his mind into that of his greatest enemy, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. After taking Peter's body, he rebranded himself as the Superior Spider-Man and created an entirely new suit, which had elements from several of his previous costumes, including the Iron Spider, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and many others. Number 6. Todd McFarlane's revamped costume. Todd McFarlane spent years working on Spider-Man and was even instrumental in the creation of Venom and a number of other classic Spidey characters. Thanks to his unique drawing style, McFarlane's Spidey suit features characteristics that separate it from the other classic suits, to include larger eyes and a newly designed emblem. Number 5. The Sensational Spider-Man. There was a period when Ben Reilly took up the primary role as Spider-Man throughout the pages of the Sensational Spider-Man in the late 90s. And yeah, I have to be honest guys, this is my personal favorite Spider-Man costume of all time. Mark Bagley just doesn't miss. It's a clever variation on the OG Spidey suit, tweaked to highlight the emblem across the entirety of his chest and torso, but that wasn't the only change, as his web shooters were worn outside the sleeves instead of being concealed as they normally used to be. Insomniac riffed on it for their iconic PS4 game design too, which also rocked. Number 4. Miles Morales' Spidey suit. With a new amazing protagonist comes a new costume, and Miles is one of the fans' favourites thanks to its red and black design and other features that separate it from the others on this list. It's a brilliant look, and one that's been iterated on in Into the Spider-Verse. Just spectacular work from Sarah Pichelli who, like her predecessor on Ultimate Spider-Man, simply does not miss. Number 3. Steve Ditko's original costume. This was the first ever costume to make it a print and the one most people know of as Spider-Man thanks to its prominent debut on the cover of Amazing Fantasy number 15 all the way back in 1962. Steve Ditko's original costume had features that have come and gone, including the webbing underneath the arms, which I love, and smaller eyes. But more than that, it was the classic look that inspired all the ones that followed. Number 2. The black costume. The black costume was the first real change made to the hero's look since his debut more than 20 years prior to the publication of the Secret Wars number 8. The symbiote suit was incredibly popular when it debuted, but more than that, it provided an origin for the villain turned anti-hero known as Venom. Also, judging from the fact that Peter actually sewed his own black costume after getting rid of the alien, he knew it looked hella good too. And number 1. John Romita Sr.'s updated costume. When John Romita Sr. got involved in drawing Spider-Man back in 1966, he made a few alterations to the character's costume, which ultimately stuck for longer than any other on this list. Romita removed the webbing under the arms, sad face, tightened up the colouring, and established a classic look for Spidey that would remain off and on for decades. It's the definitive Spider-Man costume, and yeah, there's no way it couldn't be number 1. And that was ranking every Spider-Man comic costume worst to best. Which is your favourite look from the comics? Sound off in the comments below, throw the video a like if you enjoyed it, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss another upload going forward. I've been Ewan, catch more of me bigging up Ben Reilly's stylish looks on Twitter @EwanRuinsThings, and I'll hopefully see you next time. Bye!